ahead and get the spring information meeting started. I want to thank everybody for coming in person and online. I know that this is such a terrible room for feeling like we have a roundtable discussion, but I feel like we did a really creative job trying to make it feel like a roundtable. So thank you all for that. The purpose of this meeting really is to provide time and information for questions and discussion about a couple of big initiatives currently at work at the town. So primarily what we have on the agenda today is to talk about an update on the municipal building project. Spend about 30 minutes on that, and then we're going to give an update and presentation on the work of the Sea Level Rise Committee, particularly around the Narrows, but have lots of things to talk about there, and then leave hopefully a few minutes just for other topics. If anybody wants to raise anything, you know, make sure we're here to answer questions. So we'll kick off first with the municipal building project. Just a little bit of history. I know some of you who had came early and attended the select board meeting heard a little bit of this already. But for quite a few years, we have been kind of experiencing a crunch at the town office, health center, public safety buildings. So in the March of 2021, the select board appointed a municipal building committee to help evaluate kind of where things stood, make recommendations about what we could do as a community to change, and they have been working since 2021. That committee is chaired by Lauren Bruce and vice chaired by Pete Anderson. Pete Anderson, Janet Senior. Janet. Andrew. Sorry. Peter. So after a thorough analysis, the committee recommended that the town consider building a new health center, building a public safety garage up island above the Narrows, and expanding space here in the municipal building for additional municipal staffing, or for not saying additional staff here in the office, but rearranging the space here is a better way to say that. So in February of 2022, the select board appointed Stephen Blatt Architects to do our preliminary designs. They came back with an estimated cost for the project of $3.5 million. In September of 2022, the voters approved the overall plan and a warrant for half of the construction cost of $1,750,000, with the remaining being raised from private donations, which is remarkable. Because of rising construction costs, unfortunately, the road has not been easy since then. 2 years have passed, and the project has gotten more expensive. And so I want to turn it over to the municipal building committee to talk a little bit about where we are now. This is leading up to the select board just approved to hold a special town meeting on Wednesday, April 24th. So we're here to provide information and discussion ahead of that meeting, and we'll have additional time for discussions and vote on this project at that April 24th meeting.
Thank you, Shay. It was a great introduction, and apologies from me as well about this arrangement. This is so that you all can see when Steve Blatt and Mark Willett from Steve Blatt Architects show some of the designs, etc. This is so you'll be able to see them without turning around in your seat, or, you know, I mean, making it comfortable. And we need to stay up here. I wanted to come up close. We both wanted to come up closer, but the owl and the visual for the people on Zoom won't work unless I'm sitting back over here. So it's awkward, but we're making it work. I just want to say, first of all, that there are several members on the municipal building committee that are here tonight. And that's, Linda Gillies, right here in the green vest up in this side over here. If you don't know her, you should know her. And Dareth Roberts to her right. Also Christine Robb is on the ad hoc committee as well as Christine Brazier in the back over there. One of the members is on Zoom because he's deathly ill, and that's Pete Anderson. Most of you know Pete Anderson. And I think, is Jay still here, or did he?
He left.
We lost him, but we've kept Bill Boardman, who is also on the. For those of you who don't know, I'm sorry. I was just reading my script instead of looking at you guys, and that's the big mistake of the century. As Shay just said, the original cost estimate for the entire project was $3,500,000, and we raised $1,750,000 through a municipal bond, and we raised $1,849,658, almost 100,000 more in private donations in 6 months. 2 years later, we have the final guaranteed maximum price. Final guaranteed maximum price means that it will not go above that, period. And if it goes below, the savings accrued will come back to the town. The maximum price is $4,465,990. So the shortfall that we're looking for in the warrant is $866,332. We need to request that amount to complete the project. And I'm glad to report then that the select board has approved bringing that warrant forward to the town for a vote on April 24th. Now I'd like to give you a bit more context for the increased costs. So I've asked Mark Olette and Steve Blatt from Steve Blatt Architects to briefly talk about the current building climate and review our efforts to reduce costs, including the redesign of the health center and the Up Island Public Safety Garage. We intend and plan to and will complete all 3 parts of this project: the Up Island Public Safety Garage, the health center building, and renovation of this building. I just want to be clear about that. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark and Steve to go over some of the designs and give us some information and budget information. Can we increase their?
I said it so that when he starts speaking.
No. Go ahead,
Good
Mark.
evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Appreciate everyone coming out this evening to listen to what we have to say. So Lauren briefly asked me to describe some of the bidding climate and some of the procedures that we've gone through in working with the construction manager, which is Ledgewood Construction, on some value management exercises that we've gone through and trying to reduce the cost to this. I'll start with the bidding climate. Post COVID, what we've seen and had Ledgewood describe to us is that for a while, building materials and supply chains were an issue and costs were very unsteady. That has normalized to some extent. We're still not at pre-COVID levels in that regard, but what's really adding to costs for construction these days is staffing availability and labor shortages. A lot of tradespeople that were older have retired. They chose to retire. And contractors and subcontractors are not able to replace those people that have retired. And so they're short-staffed, and they are having difficulty keeping people staffed and on their projects. As a result, they're really busy. And they being subcontractors, are not as competitively or aggressively bidding projects because they know the work is out there. And so kudos to Ledgewood Construction and Peter Pelletier. He really beat the bushes and really making sure that we had all trades covered for both projects. And the numbers we received are reliable. We feel that he's vetted those numbers and sat down with them, and so we feel that we have a fair price or accurate snapshot, but we're still high, above our budget numbers, and we've gone through multiple exercises to try to value manage things in terms of coming up with cost savings ideas. We've done a fair amount of redesign as a result of those efforts and recommendations by Ledgewood Construction. I'll get into those in a little bit. Have we had any success in pulling up the PDF, Carrie?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll go briefly over some of those cost saving measures. In short, we've reduced I'll just summarize before or while she brings those up, but in short, we've reduced building square footages, building volumes. Site plans have not really changed too much, but we've come up with some other value engineering items that include some of our engineering disciplines. I'll get into that in a little bit. I've included the site plans here. What I'll show you in a minute are basically two versions of each building project. Site-wise, they don't vary that much. The buildings will be located virtually in the same positions. The footprints and square footages change a little bit, but I won't spend too much time on the site plans themselves. I will point out this is the healthcare center facility site plan, which is adjacent to the existing town hall. We've located it between the existing fire department and the back end of the area that was cleared, correct? In that area, the topography is such that it drops off on the west side of the building a fair amount. And we were always kind of fighting the building size and location. We couldn't get it too close to the fire department because of an underground tank. And we didn't want to go too far west either because we were going down the hill and foundations get challenging when you do that. So I'll get into it in the next slide, but we did change the configuration of the building to address those issues. Carrie, if you could go to the next plan, correct? This is our previous design that was bid with another construction manager. The front area is the healthcare center. That's the main entrance. We had series of a waiting room, a series of doctor's offices, a check-in area. And then in the middle of the building, we had exam rooms and some toilets. And in the back, we had some support spaces that include a critical care room, a lab space, a pharmacy, and some patient toilets. And then in the back of the building, we had a on-call doctor's apartment. That portion of the building is what we revised considerably. And since we're on that side of the building that was working against us as it relates to the topography and the slope of the grade. That was costing deeper footings and a fair amount of excavation and a fair amount of fill brought on site from off island, which was very costly. I won't spend too much time on this, but we did plan for the future. To the right-hand side of the plan, we are showing some future construction and working with the existing setbacks and the property lines. In this design, the building was designed much like a cottage. We had sloped roofs that one worked with on face the south side that allowed us to install photovoltaics on the south side of the building, and allowed us to also include HVAC units within the attic space. That attic space would have been tempered or heated, and would have made those mechanical units perform very efficiently. And they last longer too, if they're weather protected from weather. This, I'll get into the financials and the bids at the end of this, but this was identified as a costly endeavor in the sense that we were creating a lot of building volume. That attic space was costly. If you could go to the next slide, please. This is our revised design. So at the back of the building, we relocated the on-call doctor's on-call apartment from the rear of the building to the right side of the building. We believe that that will still allow for ample future expansion, and still working within the existing property lines. One big change that we've done, as you can see, is change the roof line. We've constructed a flat roof portion on a good portion of the building that we feel is obscured by the town hall and fire department paramount, so that the entry condition and design remains largely intact, and still provides ample opportunity for south-facing photovoltaics on the roof itself, in addition to the flat roof area off to the right. So we've modified the architecture accordingly. We did shrink the building down a little bit to reduce the volume, in addition to the roof line changes. In this scheme, the ambulance overhead canopy to the left-hand side of the building is slightly reduced in this scheme, saving a little bit of money. But largely intact is the floor plan and the general arrangement, with the obvious exception of the apartment to the right. The building function as a healthcare center remains virtually identical. Room adjacencies all stay the same, all stay the same sizes. We've created a few more flexible spaces in terms of exam rooms, doubling as potential multi-function rooms for telehealth medicine, as well as a space for future dentist practice. And potential, if we do, God forbid, do have another pandemic, some of those spaces, the first exam room there can double. Phlebotomy and blood draw can happen in that space, and people exit directly to the exterior, not have to go inside the barrier, if you will, or inside the building, and help provide virus protection and spread of in that fashion. That's basically it. Those are the major design changes for the health center. Do people have questions so far to this point before I move on to the Up Island Garage?
I do. So flat roof, I mean, we're talking flat with a membrane. Is that how you plan on doing that? Or is there a little pitch to it at all, or?
Yeah, so flat roofs are considered 1/4 inch per foot or less. We
Okay.
would do an EPDM roof. There is a slight pitch for draining purposes. Yep.
Thank you.
The flat roof EPDM roof will last longer than shingle roof. So that it's one less thing that you have to concern yourself. So you probably get an additional 5 to 10 years of utilizing an EPDM membrane as compared to a shingle roof.
Thank you.
So the difference between the 4,000 something feet in the future expansion area and this one, what happened to the other 1,500 square feet of future expansion?
So, yeah, that's a little bit misleading. I mean, the building in this design has gotten narrower, less, not as wide as the original, obviously. You could still build in the back portion of the building there and gain some of that square footage, but it's just not as efficient. You could still build back there though.
So once you do rebuild and add that future wing, you're gonna have to add a proper roof to install your HVAC stuff. So you're gonna have to rip the whole roof off and completely re-rig the place.
No, not at all. You would just add on the building and extend the roof over it. Whatever you add on has its own roof and just would tie into the existing. I think we should move on to the Up Island Garage, please. Next slide. Brief overview on the site, same layout and building location regardless of the design, but we are considering some of the major costs on this project are site related. And so we are conscious of that and we'll take that into consideration. You can go to the next slide. So this is the original design. The building was 1,728 square feet, 48 feet long by 36 feet wide. We had a pitched roof that was going to accept photovoltaics and shed snow and water. Again, we heard the same comments from Ledgewood Construction about building volume and the cost of framing the roof and added heated space. In this building in particular, the added insulation of creating a flat roof or above the ceiling in the attic was costly. So we took a look at value engineering efforts on this building by reducing the square footage. We simplified the roof line. We changed some of the building materials, and we also simplified the program considerably. In this design, we had a kitchenette, a break room, some storage area, and a larger bathroom. In the next slide, we shortened the building by 6 feet, so it's now 42 feet long. We've simplified some of the program space. We've taken out the kitchenette. We've taken out the break room. The storage room is taken out. We don't have a formal room, but you could still have ample storage space within the shelter itself. And we've flattened the roof on this one. This is a low sloped roof, EPDM, once again, exposed structure, which is wood trusses on the inside of the building. But that allows us to put our insulation on the deck on the outside of the building, which exposes the structure, as I mentioned, but also creates a thermal plane. The building itself, you don't have to heat an attic space in this design. We do have still, we did show and had bid the in-slab heating in the concrete floor. We have numbers for that. That is a costly endeavor, but we did minimize the Foundations, we do have a thickened slab and haunch condition. We don't have deep foundation footings on this building any longer. So those are the changes in a nutshell. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I won't go through all the numbers, but we included 3 columns highlighted in green at the top of the sheet. The column 1 is our original budget. Again, this was established several years ago, but we know the bidding market has since changed. We've gone through 2 guaranteed maximum price exercises. This middle column includes the guaranteed maximum prices for both the healthcare center and the Up Island garage. And we had carried some monies to do renovations within the existing town hall as well. As mentioned in the prior meeting, both building project numbers came in higher than anticipated. 3.2 for the healthcare center and almost $1 million for the Up Island garage. Through considerable discussion, we've worked with the municipal building committee and decided that the health center was within reach, if you will, at 3.3 million, and decided to carry money, the budgeted 432,000 shown in column 3 there for the Up Island garage, and consider different building construction methods. One item or idea we're looking at is potentially talking to pre-engineered metal building manufacturers who basically have kits that are pre-sized, pre-detailed, and prefabricated that get erected on site. So we will look into that and continue to work with the building committee to analyze that. So in that third column, we are carrying the 3.3 million for the health center. We're carrying the $100,000 for the future renovations of the city town hall, and the budgeted 432,000 for the Up Island garage, which in comparison with the monies or monies that have been raised of 3.6 million, let's call it, we're over and are asking for an additional warrant amount of $866,332. I've gone over this pretty quickly, and so I would understand if there are questions at this point.
We're actually running out of time for this part of the information meeting. So we can have a couple of really quick questions if there are any, Bill.
I know you're tired of me asking this question, but could you tell me what it would cost to put a pitched roof on the Up Island garage? What extra cost that would be?
We don't know. We can ask the value of that. We've kind of abandoned that notion, but we can ask our contractor or GC rather for a value for that.
Thank you.
Melissa?
What is the cost? I know that you had said for the Up Island garage, you said that the groundwork was going to be substantial to get everything just situated for it. Is that correct?
Well, there is some
Oh,
site
like the
work.
site work?
Yeah.
Do you have an estimate of what the site work was?
We have it broken down in the detailed estimates that Ledgewood has provided. We didn't include them in this presentation, but we have those and can make those available. included some reworking of drives, access drives, refinishing of those drives. We do include some site utilities, which include a well, digging a well, and a sewage
I was just more
septic, a
curious,
septic.
right, I
Uh,
was just more curious of the 400 and something that was in the original column 1, if that was also included, given the site challenges that was there.
Well, yes, yes, we will include that. And we're actually hoping to reuse some existing, the existing access road that's there now. What we did discover during the design process is that there's some right-of-way issues that we have to iron out if the existing roads are to be kept and reused, so.
Thank you.
We really, Pete Anderson and then, not sure.
Josh.
Josh. Okay, and then we're really gonna, I guess what we're gonna have to do is have a lot of this at the next meeting, because we've got 2 parts today to get covered. So, go ahead, Pete.
I'm just curious, so you have the estimate in the middle column at 969, 410, the up island garage. And then we're moving back down to 432. Is that a realistic change? Like, given that the estimate was almost $1 million for a stick-built building, does it feel realistic that we'll be able to accomplish the same goals with that same 430,000?
Smaller building, different roof. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's our hope. We're gonna have to consider different delivery methods, but that's why we're gonna be looking at the prefab metal building option as opposed to stick building.
Thank you. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. I didn't catch that.
We're gonna have to consider alternate methods for the building delivery and construction. That's why we're gonna entertain looking at a prefab metal building, as well as keeping some of the existing site work minimalized or defer some of it.
So yes, you think that's a reasonable estimate for the cost of that building?
We feel we can work within that number.
Thank you.
Josh?
You know, I was never real good at math, and I'll be right up front with that, but on the future, on the new health centers, 2,761 square feet. If you were to cut that off entirely, that's even bigger than this Up Island Station, so what's the purpose of needing that now versus entertaining the Up Island Station? I mean, somebody wants to make money, clearly, you can see that.
I don't understand which part are you talking
So
about?
if you were to take off this future piece here that's not gonna be used,
Oh, we may never use it.
but I mean, it's. Why,
It's not being
why,
built, Josh.
well, why excavate that?
It's not being excavated. There's no money being spent on that at all, 0.
It's just a
It's
dream.
just, it's just a
dream,
picture. Some people were wondering why, at a previous meeting, someone thought that there would, with the new design, there would be no way to expand. So we're just trying to allow people to see that if we ever wanted to expand, it is possible.
And we won't need that.
We won't need that. Yeah, Dylan?
Yeah, are you able to involve, island-based subcontractors? Or is this gonna be all off-island contractors in the building?
I want to answer that, and then maybe Bill or Pete Anderson, if he's not sick, will respond. We tried very, very, very hard to get island contractors. They were just so busy that we didn't get any bids from any island contractor.
You asked me last month.
Yeah.
Years ago, up the Island Fire Department, we have to, we put out bids. I went and talked to every contractor on the island to see if they would build the fire station up island, and no one put a bid in. Except for, who was it, Main Coast Construction put a bid in.
Yeah.
So we probably, this is really, I am so sorry to act like I'm cutting off discussion because I really don't want to cut off discussion, but we have a whole other presentation that's happening and I promised that we'd be done in 30 minutes and we're already over. I have a whole other section that I wanted to share with you, but I will share that at the next meeting, and please come to the next one because we'll go more in depth, have more time with this particular issue, I promise you. And there'll be no questions that are left unanswered.
Is this the April 24th?
Yes, this is the April
But
24th.
that's the date the vote is supposed to be.
That's right, that's why,
Well, there's not gonna be much opportunity to discuss and do anything with the discussion if the vote is gonna happen the same day. So maybe there should be another meeting between now and the vote.
I think that's a great idea. We'll try to fit one in.
Thank you.
Hey, Lauren,
I mean,
Yeah.
or we could just discuss everything we came here to discuss and we'll have dinner late. I mean, I don't like a long, I don't.
Yes.
We have a guest here. We probably have to.
I'm staying over.
No, hold up for me. Keep going.
Okay.
Fred.
On Zoom.
Oh, Fred, yes, Fred, please.
I just have a question for clarification because I'm a little bit mixed up right now. The money that you're going to be bringing up at town meeting to be raised next week is going to be for the health center, and that does not include the renovations of the old space and the barn. Am I correct?
No, and thank you for the question. The total amount that we're asking for does include all three parts of the project. So the health center, the Up Island Public Safety Garage, and the renovation. The 430,000, I forget the number.
32.
Yeah, 432, for the Up Island Public Safety Garage is in the budget. Mark Willett is being very careful, but most builders that I've talked to think that it's very reasonable to think that we can build a 2-bay garage Up Island for $432,000.
And all of that's
So-
included in the guaranteed maximum price, right?
Yes, all of that is a part of the guaranteed maximum price.
Okay.
No,
Right.
No, that's not that's latter part is not a fair statement.
Oh, yes, it's included because we budgeted it, yes.
Correct.
But the term.
But it's
guarantee-
not, we're not carrying that guaranteed maximum price received from Ledgewood. That's that $969,000 that we did not feel is good value.
Yeah,
Guaranteed maximum price addresses the healthcare center only.
That's what I thought.
yeah,
Oh.
but included, okay, so
100,000.
what we've set aside and we're asking for totally is not just the guaranteed maximum price that covers what's being constructed for the health center. It also includes $100,000. If you add up all those numbers on that bottom part of the sheet, you'll see that it includes the 432,000 for the Up Island Public Safety Garage and the 100,000 for the renovation. What you're saying, Steve, is true. The term guaranteed maximum price has to do with what we have negotiated with Ledgewood. Under Ledgewood's contract management, we are, that part is under contract management with Ledgewood, and that is not included. In fact, I have the statement that I didn't get to yet for all of you. One clarification, the total request of $836,332 will cover the cost of all three projects, but we will not be using Ledgewood Construction to build the Up Island Public Safety Garage. The bids for that small building were too high, so we'll be looking for other ways to build that. So it's, everybody's right, but it's very complicated. The term guaranteed maximum price has to do with Ledgewood Construction, but the amount that we're asking for to be approved in the warrant includes both that guaranteed maximum price for Ledgewood and the 100,000 for the Up Island, 432,000 for the Up Island Public Safety Garage and the 100,000 for the renovation. So all the money's in there, but we're not going to use Ledgewood for the Up Island Public Safety Garage.
Can we also answer
That's
Frank?
not guaranteed.
Correct.
He's on Zoom.
Okay.
And we have a question from Frank.
Yeah, my question was, I see the original price and short of trying to do all the math for it, after making all the changes for what you're calling value construction, how much money was felt was reduced in costs with all those changes? So we can get a real better idea of what we took away from the building from the original price, how much we're saving, and how much we're over the original thought process, as opposed to just looking at it as 1 million.
That may be possible to get, but I certainly can't get that for you right now. But, you know, a good thought exercise.
So after doing the value construction analysis and taking things off, there's not a number as to how much was felt to be reduced in the overall cost from the original 3.5 million?
Well, it's a little bit
Yeah.
on, we're dealing with two construction managers. The first one provided the original design GMP, and then Ledgewood provided the second GMP with the revised numbers. So the second contractor did not price both the original design. Does that make sense? But we could potentially put a value to that.
This is Steve Blatt. When we started our work with Ledgewood, Pete Pelletier took a very good look at our plans, and he said, I advise you to make these changes. Because he knew what our budget target was, and he said, we're not going to meet your target unless you make changes. What has shocked us is that even though we made the changes, the cost of construction has increased so much that we need another $800,000+. So were we to go through the exercise of having Pete Pelletier at Ledgewood tell us what our original design would cost, we know it's going to cost more. His responsibility was to tell us, in order to target your budget, you've got to do several things, and these are they. And that's what we did. So, I mean, I'm not the cost estimator, but if the cost estimator says to us, you better take your volume out of your roof and you better try to get your building less downhill towards the wetlands, we listen to them. Listen to the construction manager and do that. Because we all know what our goal is.
Right, I don't doubt that. I'm just so to clarify, that 3.5 original estimate, was that before or after the changes were made for value construction to try to reduce the cost?
3.5 was made before design. It was made from our extensive work with the medical facilities staff. We came up with a program of spaces. We knew how large it was going to be. We put a square foot number on that per our cost estimator, our independent cost estimator, and we came up with what we thought it would be, which was $2.5 million, the construction of the medical facility. It's ended up costing 3.378. That's what cost inflation has done to us. So we didn't design the building fully and put a square footage cost to that. We wrote the program, which gave us the size. We knew it was a one-story slab on grade building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we put a number to it. That number was not only too unfounded, according to what's been happening to construction costs, but we had to down design in terms of the volume and the floor plan to start to approach our goal.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then my only other question is, what is the plan if these buildings, if this gets passed, approved, and so forth, and these buildings start being built, and we can't find a feasible way to build the up island annex building or whatever it's called this year, and there's not enough funds to build it, what is the contingency plan then?
Well, we've, I will give you some frightening numbers. The fire barn, which is what I call them, came in at $641 a square foot. That's a really basic, large garage at $641 a square foot. That's an extraordinarily high number. And we just don't think there's value there. That's what we want to tell you. The medical facility is a very sophisticated building. And it has a lot crammed into its 4,500 square feet. The fire barn has nothing. That's why we advise you not to spend that money. And our project from now over the next month to 2 months will be to find out, to do much more research with different ways to build it, different builders. We're going to investigate how we can get that built for a reasonable number. We can't
Okay,
guarantee it.
Thank you, Steve. I think Ken had one question and then I think I'm
There's
sorry.
a question in the chat as well.
Oh, I can't read it from here.
It says from Fred Porter, so if next week is approved, you guarantee that the garage and the public safety renovations.
Yes,
We do
guarantees.
We do not guarantee anything.
No, they don't.
They
And
don't.
they're saying
It's
no.
not guaranteed.
Well, you're
Well,
saying
they're
that.
not, no, it's,
You ain't have a design yet.
we don't have design yet, but we have, you guys, it's as close we can't. We were working from the best, most reasonable amount of money we thought we had. And Steve was saying basically that we aren't under the guaranteed maximum price because we haven't done the final work to get a contractor or a metal building. But we've put aside what we reasonably think for square footage for this type of building, it would cost. That's what you do. Until you get down to where you're actually hiring someone to build it, we don't know exactly what the cost will be, but we think we have set aside more than sufficient funds for that size building. And that's what we would have to do. Steve, correct me where I'm wrong there.
Oh, you're exactly right. Had we known that people were going to look at that project and spend almost as much per square foot for the barn as for the medical building, we would have backed off long ago. I mean, I think that barn is worth $400,000. I don't think it's worth much more, and you shouldn't spend it. So give us a short while to do that. We can't guarantee anything, but we can spend our time researching and investigating and talking to a number of different people. I'd like to bring it up with the locals again and see if this is a really simple building. It is not technologically difficult. So that's what we want to do. And we want to get you started on that building as soon as we can. And if we can find someone to do it, it can go simultaneous to the health building.
Oh, Michael. I have
To
a,
be fair, I was told about this years ago. Now, years have passed, so if I said, all right, boys, I'm gonna build you guys a building. And if I sat around for the past 3 years waiting for you guys to come up with money and come up with all these designs and stuff like that, I'd be broke. So it's like, I mean, granted, if I take it home, things are different, but, everybody's busy, and I know you're rushing things. It's like, God,
Russian.
your building's getting smaller and smaller. What are you gonna do with it?
can I just want to clarify, I think where we are timing wise with calling a special town meeting now, and I'm gonna state this maybe as a statement, but it is a, but it is a question. But my understanding is that, once we have the guaranteed maximum price for the health center from Ledgewood, separate from the money we're setting aside for the public safety garage and the $100,000, is that we now have a relatively small time window that they will continue to keep that guaranteed maximum price for us. So, but we can't sign that guaranteed maximum price to move forward on the project because we don't have the funds to do it.
Right.
So in an ideal world, we would have a guaranteed maximum price for all three parts of the project. But we will lose the guaranteed maximum price that we have by not putting that to a vote now and doing our best to set aside money that we hope will be enough for the other two aspects of the project. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Perfect.
Perfect, yes. And well said. And
Ken Smith.
No, no, good. Building the building is one thing, then you have to equip it. The health center obviously would be an expense to equip it. We received a federal grant to equip it, and I read in the paper that we can use some of that money as far as the building is concerned. Is that also true?
It is not true in the sense that we can't use it for construction. But it is true in the sense that, for instance, when Krenzica, who wrote this brilliant grant, it was $845,000 we received.
Right.
It will pay for all kinds of things around medical supplies, not sonograms, what am I asking?
Ultrasound.
Yeah, and also, solar panels, but we couldn't write a grant hoping that we would have money for construction and then not get the grant, so we couldn't put any hard, more, main construction costs.
Equipment for the building,
Yeah,
Okay, so,
medical and energy efficiency. That's what the grant is for, equipment for the building,
I understand.
energy efficiency and medical equipment. That's it.
yeah.
I
Jessica,
understand.
do you want to add any clarification on that?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, well, will it take care of things like this? Is that legitimate?
Heat pump? Heat pump? Sure.
Yes, heat pump is,
Thank you.
heat pump is not in the grant. But it's already included in the price that we have in the budget.
What about, additional training for the health center workers? Is there money for that too?
For training the staff?
Yeah,
For what purpose?
so that they know how to use the new equipment and stuff like that.
Well, Owen could speak for that, he's right.
Yeah. Do you need,
I don't know if the money in that $700,000 can be used for training or not. I don't know that.
There's an allowance for indirect costs, so we might be able to discuss something like that, but I'm not certain.
Yeah, if we're gonna get ultrasound, which is the new technology for imaging, most of the people who sell ultrasound equipment provide training
okay,
along with the ultrasound equipment. So, and it's for a lot of the people who sell this equipment, it's ongoing training, so it's on-site and then remote training. It goes on indefinitely.
so I have the feeling that there's still a lot more lingering questions, and I think with respect to our guests who have another presentation coming up right after this one, I think we'll end it, but I will explore with the powers that be, setting up another information meeting prior to the point of the vote. And see if we can get it just exclusively on this topic. But I think,
word out.
yeah, thank you all. Well, we did do that, but thank you all very much for attending this part. I hope you stay for the next part.
Sea level rise.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
No, Max, no, Max, exit, everybody in your seats.
Oh, yeah, is that all? That's not,
Any last words on municipal building before we transition?
The only,
Good
the
job,
only
Lauren.
thing, the only thing is that, Linda Gillies was going to say just a word or two. And I hope you will indulge us for one last brief thing because she prepared a statement.
Oh, well, may I do it from here?
Sure.
Yeah. Since Islesboro's early days, island residents from both the year-round and seasonal communities have been supportive of the departments that provide health and safety services. They safeguard all residents and in so doing, make our island safe, strong, and self-reliant. This support of the municipal building project, for instance, this is true of the support for the municipal building project. And we've already given you the figures of what it was gonna cost and how, and there was a bond and we raised over $1,800,000 in private support. It's extraordinary to raise that kind of money. And it's a clear indication that the year-round and seasonal communities are solidly behind the municipal building project. To be sure, the rise in prices caused by the pandemic has made the project more costly than anticipated, but the need is there. And for long-term health and safety of our island, we urge you to approve the warrant for the additional funds required. Thank you.
Thank you, Municipal Building Committee. And we will now transition to the next part of our information meeting. I appreciate everyone's patience and hanging with us. I understand it's a long time, so if people need to get up and use the bathroom, I won't take offense. I'm assuming if you're heading out the door, it's because you need to use the bathroom, and I'll see your smiling face again soon. I just wanted to, so the Sea Level Rise Committee was formed in 2020, and the town charged us with understanding and sharing what our vulnerabilities were to sea level rise and to storm surge, and to develop a plan to make us more resilient. We've identified a number of areas of concern. Do you want to turn on the slideshow? All of those have been very much highlighted in the most recent January 10th and January 13th storms. We started out as a committee very focused on the Narrows, but also understanding that we're incredibly vulnerable at the ferry landing and ferry road, at Sprague's Beach, at the electrical cable where it comes in at West Bay Road, around the Dark Harbor septic system. We've seen major issues happening at East Shore Drive over the past few storms with erosion happening, and a number of other areas around the island. Can I just ask you, if you're online, if you could mute and raise your hand if you have a question? I'm just getting a little bit of feedback. Thanks. We have started out as a committee focused on the Narrows because the Narrows is a town-owned right-of-way. We have started conversations with the State Department of Transportation to develop plans for the Grindle Point, because that is kind of a shared space between the state and the town. And felt like tackling the Narrows through a planning process would help exemplify for the state how we wanted to go about having a community conversation and developing a plan for the vulnerability. So we have a very active sea level rise committee. Our members are Nancy Alexander, Peter Wilcox, Peter Rothschild, Jennifer West, Chloe Jewell, Sue Stafford, Fred Porter, Donna Leone, and Lauren Bruce. And we have amazing support with Liv Lenfesti, who is our Island Fellow for the past couple of years, and also with Sri Verrill, who is our project manager at the Narrows and here joining us in person today. You can go to the next slide. Everyone, I'm sure many of you saw this, many of the pictures from the January 10th and 13th storms. The next slide. One of the things that I just kind of wanted to highlight around how we're thinking about our planning efforts is that we are considering both what we need to be planning and thinking about for long-term sea level rise scenarios, and also thinking about how we need to plan for the storm surge for the increased storm events that we are seeing in a much more frequent basis. So on this slide, 1978, I believe, was the #1 storm up to the January 2024 storms. The blue is what we see as the high tide for those events, and the red is the storm surge that we saw on top of those events. And I just want to highlight that we're recognizing and we need to plan for both, but the strategy for how we handle both is a little bit different. Fred, I just see you have your hand up.
Sorry, I didn't put it down from before.
No worries. Next slide. So from the past couple of years, we have raised $100,000 in grants, which allowed us to bring on Sri as our project manager and to hire an engineering firm to help develop an alternatives analysis to assess options for what we can do at the Narrows. GZA is the engineering firm that we hired in January. They came out to the island for the first time on the 18th and looked at the site. And Sri will talk more about the details of their work with us. And what I kind of want to just say about it is that we are working on a grant deadline because they are grant funded. And the deliverables for GZA to us for this first phase of the Narrows project is that by the end of May, they will have 3 alternatives for us to consider for how we can adapt at the Narrows. Those 3 designs will be to a 15% design scenario. But they will give us information about ballpark pricing, about environmental impact, about cost, the big picture things that we need to know as a community so that we can select which alternative we want to move forward with and bring to a full design. So they'll give us 3 to 13%. They will then, once we choose one of the 15%. 3 to 15%, right?
4 options will be brought to 15% design. The community will decide.
Right, so and I'm getting there. So once we have those options, then we can decide which of those options we want to move forward to the design that we bring forward. GZA is funded to bring us to 30% design for the alternative that we select. And then we need to begin the next phase, which is detailed engineering work so that we can get to the permitting that is required to implement any solution at the Narrows. So we're going to present kind of where we are now, but I want to highlight the fact that we are, I feel like we're sort of in 2021 from the municipal building project perspective, in that we are still very much in the information gathering phase and recognizing that we have a unique we're in a unique moment in history where there is an opportunity for a lot of public investment coming in to support communities in doing these kind of adaptation strategies. So we're doing our best to be prepared, but we also recognize that this is a long-term investment for the community. And so we're really trying to balance those, but make sure that we are as prepared as possible to take advantage of the public dollars that are coming down the pike. So that's kind of from a big picture perspective, what we're trying to do. And Shree's gonna kind of talk through the details about where we are now, and just know that we're very much in the middle of this we're very much in the middle. We don't have something to say, here's what we recommend right now, but we want to involve the community as much as possible as we go through this process, because we want to be prepared so that if we have the opportunity to apply for public funding, that we are well prepared to do so.
15% of what? Can you explain what that means? 15%, what?
I'm gonna turn that over to Shree before I put my foot in my mouth. She'll correct me anyway.
Thank you, Shay. It's nice to be here. To answer your question, if there's a full engineering design, that's 100%. The 15% is just enough to see what the cost might be, so they can give a ballpark. Yeah. Okay. That was the easy question. All right, so the Maine Climate Council has recommended that communities around Maine commit to prepare for 1.5 to 3.9 feet of sea level rise by 2050. And they also recommend that communities consider preparing for 3.9 to 8.8 feet by 2100. Right, next slide, please. So I would just back up a little bit. I'm a salt marsh biologist. I'm a project manager, and I am here to ensure that the community-driven process takes into account the health of the marsh, so we can really find the best solution that works for all factors. So this is, I'm gonna try not to blind anybody except for maybe myself. No, here we go. Okay, it works. Do you want to show a light off, or is that good?
I mean,
Like, I think, no, I mean ceiling lights. Yeah, I mean.
I think it's okay.
Okay. So, while this is the NOAA predicted sea level rise scenarios, and you'll notice on the bottom is the time, and on the x-axis, on the y-axis is the elevation of sea level in feet. So we're right around here in 2023, and the predicted sea level rise scenario for 2050, the recommendation for committing to manage is at, well, the low scenario is at 1.5 by 2050, and then 3.9. And over here, about 70 years out, we have the 8.8 scenario and then the 3.9. So what is this gonna look like for Islesboro? Next slide, please. This is a photo, aerial photo of the Narrows, and the arrows pointing to what we're calling the southern section of the Narrows. We've broken it up into three sections: north, middle, and south. The south being the place where is the large revetment or seawall currently. And if you look at the blue shape that's kind of colored in, so you'd expect to see that's really where the water lands at the highest annual, highest astronomical tide, which is about 7.2 feet. So just remember that number. And this is in the North American Vertical Datum, 1988. Thank you, Vanna. Who's circling that? She should have a next slide, please. So the NAVD 88 is the North American Vertical Datum, and that is that's the terminology that we're going to be used to describe where the water hits the land. So this is an image of 3.9 feet above the highest astronomical tide. So that's 11.1 feet, NAVD 88. And if you recall, several slides back, Shay showed the January 13th storm surge was it 3.37? So this is 3.9. So the light green area is expected to be maybe not inundated, but definitely getting wet. And, if you all saw January 13th, this should more or less line up. It's a little higher than the 3.37 feet that were reported. So 7.2 is highest astronomical tide. The 3.9 scenario is 11.1. And I'm sure you've all heard of FEMA, the base flood elevation, and what GZA, the engineering company, is using for the base flood elevation is 9.5. So that's somewhere in between the previous slide and this one. Next slide, please. So here is a topographic bathymetric heat image. You'll see the kind of the yellow area is around 9 feet. And I don't know if you can read that. Congratulations. The lower red call out is approximately 9 feet in average is the elevation of the road on the southern section. And then on the northern section is just under 9.5 on average. So if you remember, that is the FEMA base flood elevation, which means during the 100-year flood, these roads are inundated. Next slide, please. So here is a draft of the existing conditions provided by GZA. Again, we've broken it into 3 segments and only 2 of the segments are shown here. The top is the middle section and the bottom is the south. Let's start in the south, because I think that's, in my mind, is kind of the most famous part of the Narrows. You'll see the seawall, the current seawall here, and my hand is shaking. I can't see. I mean, I think it's the laser. I mean, so there's around 7.2 feet, right around here, below the arrow, is where the highest astronomical tide hits. The red arrow shows the FEMA 100-year flood. And the additional 3.9 feet on top of that is where that blue line is. Same story, both in the south and the middle. So if you'll notice at the 9-foot road in the southern section and the 9.5 foot road in the middle section, cars getting wet. That's kind of. Yeah, next slide. Next slide, please. So the prepare to commit scenario that GZA is using is the 3.9 foot scenario. The recommendation at this time, okay, so nothing's decided yet, but at this time, they're suggesting that all 3 sections of the road be raised. And it's an option for the southern and middle section are these are improved revetments. So on the left is what's called a gabion basket or mattress, depending on who you're talking to. We can have smaller stones that are contained by wire mesh and therefore are not in danger of being moved across the causeway while the storm surge is happening. On the right are larger stones. So one recommendation is to build the seawall higher using one of those options. Now, on the bottom left is essentially, it's a return wall. If you think of a Jersey barrier, everybody know what a Jersey barrier is? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So it's basically a curved Jersey barrier that will be set down inside of the seawall so now if you look at my fingers over here, so when the waves are coming in on the revetment, the idea is to build it as high as so the waves won't overtop. But if there is a return wall, the water is kind of gonna go back east and not return, not inundate the road. So that's another option. And another alternative that they're considering is an offshore barrier that is, this is a pretty engineered option. And these, in addition to raising the road, are what they're currently looking at. So the biggest question in my mind as a salt marsh biologist was, and I know that others have had this, is how is the marsh help being considered in this? And so when you build a road higher, you gotta build it wider. And so the 2-foot elevation increase is really the highest elevation that they can design for without increasing the footprint of the width and therefore minimizing the impact to the wetlands and the mudflats. So that is another reason they're considering the 3.9 foot scenario. So so the next thing on my list is to pull together an advisory committee to make sure that the marsh health and nature-based solutions are considered, and then communicate with landowners like IIT and really make sure that we have all of the options considered, so that in May, when they come back with the 4 alternatives at 15% design, that they have answered the questions of the community and provided design alternatives that are based on that input plus engineering, obviously. So I'm gonna hand it back to Shay, that's gonna talk a little bit about the timeline and further opportunities for community input and engagement, and then we'll have a question and answer at the end.
Next slide. So this is just what we are using to keep us on track. We are in the middle of the alternatives analysis and feasibility study. As I said, we will have that alternatives analysis complete and to us from GZA in May of 2024. We then need to make a decision as a community about which of those designs we would like to select for them to bring to preliminary design at 30%. So we are doing everything that we can to have small group meetings and information sessions around town, because we recognize that between May and June's town meeting, there's not a lot of time. Right now, we're not anticipating any kind of vote asking for any money to select one of those designs. And so it may not necessarily come for a vote at town meeting, but there is a decision that needs to be made, and we want to make sure that that decision is made with as much community input as possible. So be looking for information meetings. Towards the end of May, we're gonna be doing everything that we can. If you see Liv, she'll probably talk to you about the alternatives analysis. Once we get that decision to them in June, then they will be working to get that design complete in December. Between now and then, we also are gonna begin working with they're
gonna move to the 30% design and have that completed by September.
Oh, I just see preliminary design complete December.
Oh, well, this is where the grant period, we have to spend all the money by the end of December, so the design.
Right, so we will have a design completed by December. In the middle of,
30%.
between June and December, that process is taking place. Concurrently, we need to be looking for funding to begin the next stage of engineering. And so we are actively going to be working with permitting agencies to socialize the design that we are working with and begin to work on kind of the next stage of the engineering work. So all that's to say, more information is coming soon. And, this again is just the process that we're working with at the Narrows, but we are acutely aware that there are other sites of vulnerability around the island. And so as the select board entered our budget workshop, we were very cognizant of putting money away for town repairs and maintenance that are required. And making sure that we're doing things with an eye towards building towards as much resiliency into the system as possible. So We are happy to keep the conversation going and take any questions and appreciate everyone's patience with this long marathon meeting.
And just one other point, we will start preliminary permitting with the preliminary design. So that will be an ongoing process. They'll start before the 30% design is complete.
How much is this, grant you guys
Sorry,
have?
before the final design is complete.
How much is this grant that you're working off of right now?
Right now, we have $100,000 from the grant to hire for the project manager and for the engineering study.
Those width increases at the narrows, are those things that can be expanded on or as well? I mean, you
Do you mean verbally right now or literally in the process?
in the future, I mean, how hard is it to do that? If you can only build a road up 2 feet, but you can only go so wide, but if you need 3 feet, you can go wide.
So there's about 5 feet of space in between the eastern edge of the road and the beginning of the revetment that could be utilized to make the road wider. I think they've taken that into consideration. So that's part of what I want to discuss with the advisory committee is the additional nature-based solutions that may increase the width and therefore it may increase the width of the base of the road. We have to kind of talk about the engineering and feasibility and what making it wider will mean in terms of impacts to the resources and permitting plus cost effectiveness. That's probably not the simple answer you wanted. That's it's not off the table.
Under the supposition that there's no such thing as a stupid question, have they looked at bridges?
The
Is it just too cost prohibitive?
tidal exchange. Both were plaid and excited. to talk about bridges. So it was looked at and it was considered not viable. And I would say it being tidal exchange. So whether it was a box culvert or an open bottom culvert or a bridge, it was considered not a viable option. We're in the process. I have a list here that Liv's done a great job of compiling questions that the committee members have had. She'll still take your questions and compile them, get them to me. And I plan to get back to the committee and the community with a satisfactory answer about why it was not considered feasible.
Seems like it have less environmental impact than raising the road by 2 feet and the apron and everything like that. It doesn't, a bridge doesn't,
Well,
that saltwater marsh.
one of the things about a bridge is you need solid footings, and we don't
Yeah.
have evidence of any bedrock and exactly where it is. The Army Corps plans from, was it the 70s?
I think so, yeah.
Mentions bedrock. Nancy went through the plans and it mentioned it, but it was assumed. And so geotechnical borings are outside the scope of this study. And when the design gets to the 30% completion level and either GZA continues or another company continues, they'll have to take geotechnical borings to determine what is feasible. 4 footings.
I envision dredging it out and you go from the east bay to the west bay.
You're not the only one.
We'll talk about it.
Well, I will say for the health of the salt marsh, there's a very healthy salt marsh on the western side and introducing tidal exchange would, on the western side of the southern part,
Yeah.
Well, and the northern part.
Yeah.
Would introduce scour that would degrade the marsh. And so that is one of the factors.
Can you read that question, okay?
I thought I can.
So the graph of prediction of sea level rise was based on the year 2000. It predicted that in 2024, the sea level would be 1.5 feet above the 2000 level. Has this happened? What is the current sea level rise compared to 2000? Can you go back to that slide?
I can't believe we're 24 years after 2000.
Yes.
How does it he feels?
So, yeah, these age things. Okay, so here's 2000 and here we are. And so is the question, what is the difference in tide height from 20,000 to now?
Yes.
I don't have the number off the top of my head.
It's small.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the way the graph is going, we have not seen much impact to date of sea level rise. The main impact we've seen is the frequency and the intensity of the storm, quite apart from sea level rise.
And as the oceans continue to warm, and I'm sure being islanders, you're all aware of this, that the Gulf of Maine is warming 99 times faster than any other sea body on the planet. We can expect the increased winds that I know we've seen on the mainland and the power outages, which means higher storm surge.
Yes.
As a newcomer and as not having spent the entire summer here, I see that the decision, Shay, is slated for June, or a decision is slated for June. I'm wondering to what extent the summer folks become involved in the politics and how that may impact, from your perspective anyway, the decision-making process now versus then.
Yep. So, when we originally crafted the timeline, we had, hoped to have that decision point in August so that we would have a summer of having conversations about all three designs. In an effort not to give back the money that we were granted, we needed to spend it by December. So
I'm not
It-
suggesting
right,
that
that's what-
I'm interested in the
Right,
summer
right,
people.
right, no, so-
Perspective, I just that.
No, yeah, and so our, we recognize that we are shortening that time frame and that it's not ideal from making sure that we have a summer to socialize the ideas, and so we want to make sure that we're doing things like this and finding opportunities to have people from the seasonal community engaged and understanding what is happening. And it is our strong hope, well, I would say it's my hope that when we get our 4 designs, that it's like, okay, based on the cost, the durability, the environmental impact, like, no brainer, this is right, this is what we want to move forward with. I think we have a lot harder time if there's some real tough decisions that need to be weighed, and absolutely, we want to make sure that everyone in the community feels like they have the opportunity to participate in that decision-making process. The goal in having the decision in June is not in any way to sort of pull the wool over anyone's eye and sort of have it kind of a fait accompli before anyone gets here in the summer.
And I do have the answer about the sea level rise. There's, the Maine Geological Survey they have amazing online mappers where you can zoom in, you can look at the storm surge, you can look at the sea level. There's something called the sea level rise ticker. And the short-term trend between 2000 and 2024 is 5.23 millimeters a year or 1.72 feet per century.
Oh, Mark. You might want to just say that we have planned a meeting for seasonal people as well as the town in July. And although this isn't perfectly coordinated with the schedule for selecting alternatives, all of the alternatives that we've considered will be presented, and we'll have an opportunity to get input from everybody. That will be at the community center on Sunday, the 21st of July.
You've got a date.
We got a date. Yes.
Any other questions? All right.
What are you gonna do in the meantime before you start building bridges and things and stuff like that? Few rocks on the beach or something?
I mean, there certainly needs to be maintenance done on the there was on the northern kind of seawall area. And Janet, I don't know if you want to speak to kind of the short-term maintenance that you have planned, particularly at the Narrows, but among other areas. We have, we talked about
Lorena's Cove.
Lorena's
That's
Cove being
another one
a seawall that
that will be going out to bid, but yeah, and at the Narrows continuing, and I was interested about the Gabions. Yes, I think, essentially like a basket of rocks that's contained by wire that is going to keep it from flying over during. I think that's something we should look into putting up there, and both, but the one at the middle wall is very low. I mean, and Peter, I mean, he keeps going there and pulling the stones back up, but it needs bigger stones. It needs granite, preferably not round stones which will tumble down to the beach. And they're looking at stones, I'm thinking about the jumps, if you look at the 3.9 foot scenario, and don't quote me on this because I'm not looking at the numbers, but I think it was like a 4 foot diameter stone. If you were to go up to a 6.6 scenario, it'd have to be like a 7 foot stone. So the engineers were talking about barging over 12-ton stones one at a time. Whoa. Right, so we're looking at alternatives to that.
and I
Would be as heavy.
And I should say that Fred and Carrie are working really hard right now to get everything submitted here this next week for the FEMA deadline, in the hopes that we can recoup as much cost as we can for the repairs and maintenance that were required from the January 10th and 13th storm. So it's not a short process, but we're doing what we can to make sure that we can get costs covered as much as possible. Any questions about anything non-sea level rise? All right, well, be looking for additional opportunities for information shared on the municipal building project, and I hope that everyone will attend the special town meeting on April 24th, which will be held at the Kinnick Center. Thank you, guys. Thank you.